Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. I do have one quick favor before we get to the video that you came here for, and that is very simply this. You see that little red subscribe button below this video? Go ahead, smash that subscribe button. It really does help me. It really does help this channel grow and my audience grow. So go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. And now, here is the video that you came here for. Freeze. Former Ole Miss coach. We all know his background. Blindside, was at Ole Miss as an assistant, goes there as a head coach, was at Arkansas State. Hugh Freeze is back in college football after being out for a year or two, and he is back at Liberty. And not only is he back at Liberty, but he is back in a big way, 7-0. Liberty is an independent, but they have played two ACC schools, beat them both, beat Virginia Tech, beat Syracuse, still have North Carolina State on the schedule for later this year, and they're one of the great stories in college football. And they're one of the great stories in college football because they have this coach who is obviously in the process of redemption, but in the broader picture, he's only been there in year two, already has them 7-0, and he's, of course, showing how good of a football coach he really is. And I don't think anybody who followed his career at Ole Miss had any doubt. Remember, this is a guy that beat Alabama and Nick Saban twice. This is a guy that took Ole Miss of all schools to back-to-back New Year's Six college football bowl games, but he also had some personal stuff in his life, and he had some major NCAA violations, which we'll get into in a minute. And so because of it, he was out at Ole Miss, but he's back at Liberty. He's winning big at Liberty. And so when you win big in college football and you had success previously, you know what that means. It means that we got some SEC fan bases on those message board streets and on those Twitter streets and pretty much everywhere in between clamoring for Hugh Freeze. I think the two that are really standing out to me, the first one is very obvious. It's South Carolina. Like the Will Muschamp thing is just not working. It's not going to happen. He's not going to be the guy. He is not the answer. Not in a division where Dan Mullen is rolling. Not in a division where Mark Stoops has his program stable and continuing to improve and recruiting at a level that they never have. And not in a division with Kirby Smart. And I've been critical of Kirby Smart. You heard it on Monday's show. But that guy, as long as he's at Georgia, is going to win 10, 11 games every year. Will he beat Alabama and everybody like that? I don't know. But Kirby Smart's going to win a lot of games. Will Muschamp is not in the same stratosphere as Kirby Smart or Dan Mullen. And I think you can argue what Mark Stoops has done is significantly more impressive than anything Will Muschamp has done. So South Carolina, their fans are getting impatient. They want a new coach. And on top of them, the folks in Knoxville are becoming less and less and less patient. Now, Jeremy Pruitt, he's only in year 3. He just signed an extension recently. I don't think that Tennessee is anywhere close to moving off Jeremy Pruitt. But I'll also say this. Started 2-0, lost 4 straight, and outside of Vanderbilt could lose the rest of their games on the schedule. And if you go 3-7 in year 3, you really could be coaching for your job in year 4, even though Jeremy Pruitt had such a good second season. So I bring all this up because Hugh Freeze is all of a sudden the pretty girl with no date to the prom, and everybody is lining up to ask her, or him in this case. I think you get the analogy, Hugh Freeze, pretty girl, whatever. Pretty guy, whatever. You get the point. Hugh Freeze is going to be the hottest commodity on this current coaching carousel coming up after this offseason, and it's starting to become a question of, can this guy get to the SEC, and can he do it as soon as this offseason? And I think it's a great story, and I think it's a fascinating story. But yeah, I'm just not sold that it happens this year. I'm just not sold that Hugh Freeze is in the SEC next fall competing against your favorite team. And let me explain why. And before I do, I should probably backtrack and say it's not because he's not a good coach, because we just talked about it. And it's not because it's what I personally do not want, because I think it'd be great for college football if Hugh Freeze got back into the SEC for next season. Never forget, this guy is a content machine, one, and he's a really good football coach, too. And the way he coaches, you get him the kind of players that he could get hypothetically at South Carolina. Let me put it to you this way. If he could beat Alabama at Ole Miss, there's no reason that he couldn't compete with and beat Georgia and Florida at South Carolina. Like that, like you can argue with me if you want. I think it's indisputable that he's one of the 5 to 7 best pure football coaches in college football. And once you get past that elite upper level of Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, maybe Dan Mullen, maybe Lincoln Riley, maybe Ryan Day, there ain't many guys you're taking over Hugh Freeze just in terms of having a team prepared and ready to go. So in terms of content, I hope it happens. I hope I'm wrong on this. But there are a couple reasons why, and I'm starting to get this Hugh Freeze question quite a bit, so it feels like it's at least worth addressing on this show. And here are basically the 2 reasons why I don't think it's going to happen, at least not this coming year. One, we are still in the middle of a pandemic. And I do still think it's going to be really hard to fire someone and owe them a massive buyout in this world that we live in. Doesn't mean that no coaches are going to move, right? I talked about Jim Harbaugh on Monday's show. Never forget, Jim Harbaugh could go to the NFL. Michigan could owe him $0 on the way out. Other guys could retire. Other guys could step aside. Other guys could take other jobs. So it's not to say there will be no traction on the coaching carousel at all. But to have a situation like, say, hypothetically, a South Carolina, where you have to fire a coach and then pay him a massive buyout, I just don't think it's going to happen very often. You got to think about it from the perspective of the world that we live in. You got to think about it from the optics perspective. You got to think about it from the perspective that, one, boosters just don't have as much money as they did a year ago, 9 months ago, 8 months ago. But 2, all of these athletic departments are hemorrhaging money hand over fist. I saw a report that South Carolina could lose upwards of $58 million this year by having limited fans in the stands. That's a lot of money to lose in 1 year to then go pay Will Muschamp $15 million. Now, I know what some people would say, well, it happened in basketball. Danny Manning, he got fired with a big buyout, all that stuff. Danny Manning got fired in May before anyone realized the economic ramifications of having sports the way that they are in this climate with no or limited fans in the stands. Danny Manning got fired before basically every athletic department in the country has cut jobs across the board, has fired people, has let them go, has lost tens of millions of dollars. I just think optically it's going to be really hard for a school to get rid of a head coach in this environment with a massive buyout. Will Muschamp, from what I can read, if he is fired before December 1st, which I don't think is going to happen at this point, he'd be owed over $15 million. After this season, he would be owed $13 million. So if we're talking right around Christmas time when the season actually comes to an end. I just don't see it happening. Not that Hugh Freeze isn't a good coach, not that he's not entertaining, not that Will Muschamp is a good coach, because he's not. I just think it's going to be hard to pay somebody $13 million to go away in this climate. And then I think on the flip side, you got to think about the guy that we're talking about too, which is Hugh Freeze. And it's funny because I had a little bit of a Freudian slip on Monday morning. I was on Nick Coffey's radio show, 790 KRD in Louisville, and Nick asked me, do you think Hugh Freeze could actually get a head coaching job next season? And what I said is what I'm going to tell you now. And if you're in the car with, say, a small child, now might be the time to turn this down for the next, minute, or at the very least, fast forward to the college basketball segment. But I bring it up because Nick asked me, you think he's going to get a job? And I said, well, Nick, it's funny you say that because everyone remembers Hugh Freeze for the NCAA rules violations, for the Laramie Tunsil gas mask. But remember, he actually got fired for all the prostitutes. And I said it on air, and I felt bad because there were probably children driving around in the car, not different than what you guys are going through right now, so I hope you did turn it down. But we have to remember, Hugh Freeze has the rare double whammy of personal problems as well as NCAA problems when it came to his time at Ole Miss. The NCAA came down hard on his program even if he was not found guilty. Postseason ban. Remember, Laramie Tunsil, NFL draft, video comes out of the gas mask bong. Laramie Tunsil is asked at the NFL draft if he was ever given anything while at Ole Miss, and he says yes on national TV. He said yes. Ole Miss gets in trouble even if Hugh Freeze avoids any direct violations himself. That is a stain on his mark. And then, oh, by the way, he had the personal problems when he found out when Ole Miss found out that he was making calls to escort services on his company-issued cell phone. So as I said on the podcast, it wasn't Laramie Tunsil and the gas mask bong that got Hugh Freeze. It was Cinnamon and Destiny from over at the escort service that ultimately did him in. And so when you fire somebody and pay that person millions of dollars to go away, and then you're going to hire a guy that had escorts on the private phone and that had NCAA rules violations, that is a tough sell to your alumni base. And you have to remember, these ADs, they don't think like you and I. You guys are fans. You just want your team to win. Me, I'm in the media. I just want something entertaining. And Hugh Freeze is a lot more entertaining than anybody else can be at, say, a South Carolina. But he also comes with a lot of baggage. And a lot of these ADs are like, dude, I'm at South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, Florida, whatever. I'm making $1 million a year, $900,000 a year. I just want to keep this job and not get in trouble. Well, you know who's going to potentially get you in trouble? The guy with the NCAA rules violations. Tom Jurich had the easiest job in the world at Louisville, but he trusted Rick Pitino too much, and now Tom Jurich is doing whatever Tom Jurich is doing. You can go on and on and on. There's plenty of other examples exactly like that. Joe Oliva, LSU. He hired Ed Orgeron. Ed Orgeron won him a national championship, but he also hired Will Wade, created a lot of headaches, got forced out. And so I just don't know that an AD in this current climate financially is going to fire their coach to begin with, and I don't know that Hugh Freeze is going to get hired. To me, I think he will ultimately end up back in the SEC because he's too darn good of a coach. I think it's going to take some time, though. You know what this actually reminds me of? It reminds me of a little bit of the Lane Kiffin situation where the second Lane Kiffin got to Alabama, he blows up, has a ton of success as the offensive coordinator, and you think immediately, like, oh my goodness, this dude is going to be a hot commodity. And then you realized Lane Kiffin makes for great internet fodder and great Twitter fodder and great message board fodder. I don't know that most ADs wanted to hire him. And you know how I know that? Because he stayed at Bama for 4 years, ended up at Florida Atlantic, and it took some time to get him back to the SEC. Now, he's back now. He's handling himself well. But I'm just saying, in the broader picture, I'm just not sold that Hugh Freeze is going to be anywhere in the SEC anytime soon. I think it does happen. I'm just not sold it happens this offseason. And by the way, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I got no problem being wrong because that means that Hugh Freeze is back next year, but I just don't see it. All right, really quick.